you for tuning in to Exeter TV. The meeting will be starting shortly. While we wait, let's learn more about Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 98 and 22. Channel 98 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 13, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Bi-Weekly Report with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.
Okay, as the hour is 7 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. Good evening, Exeter. Good evening to everybody here in the room and those watching at home. Welcome to the March 14th, 2022 Town of Exeter Select Board meeting. I'd like to start by introducing the board. To my right is the Vice Chair, Molly Cowan. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
To my left, their clerk, Selectwoman Julie Gilman. Good evening.
Good evening.
A newly elected Selectwoman Nancy Belanger. Good evening.
Good evening.
And congratulations. Selectwoman Levy Roundtree Olaf had a prior commitment and will not be in attendance this evening, but we do have a quorum here with the four of us. And all the way to my left is the town manager, Mr. Rustine. Good evening.
Good evening.
Additionally with us is our recording secretary, Joanna Bartel. Good evening. Good evening. Okay, we're going to start. We have a full agenda this evening and a full house. It's nice to see the Novak room at capacity and waiting room only outside. We're going to start with the swearing in of elected officials, and I'd call the town clerk, Andy Kohler.
I'm Andy Kohler, Town Clerk of Exeter, and I'd first like to swear in the new Select Board members, so if you would please stand. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, please state your name,
I, Nico Papakosendis,
of Exeter, New Hampshire,
of Exeter, New Hampshire,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will bear faithful and true allegiance
that I will bear faithful and true allegiance
to the United States of America
to the United States of America
and the state of New Hampshire,
and the state of New Hampshire,
and will support the Constitution thereof.
and will support the Constitution thereof.
So help me God.
So help me God.
I, please state your name,
Nico Papakosendis,
do solemnly and sincerely
do solemnly and sincerely
swear and affirm
swear and affirm
that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge and perform
discharge and perform
all the duties incumbent on me
all the duties incumbent on me
as Select Board member
as a Select Board member
according to the best of my abilities,
according to the best of my ability,
agreeable to the rules and regulations
agreeable to rules and regulations
of this Constitution
of this Constitution
and the laws of the state of New Hampshire.
and the laws of the state of New Hampshire.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Sounded not a lot longer this year.
Okay, next, checklist supervisor and any trustees of the library, Swayze Parkway, and trust funds. Michelle, or Dwayne, if you'd like to come over here. Okay, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, please state, of Exeter, New Hampshire,
of Exeter, New Hampshire,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will bear faithful and true allegiance
that I will bear faithful and true allegiance
to the United States of America
to the United States of America
and the state of New Hampshire,
and the state of New Hampshire,
and will support the constitutions thereof,
and will support the constitutions thereof.
so help me God.
So help me God.
I
I, Dwayne Staples,
do solemnly and sincerely
do solemnly and sincerely
swear and affirm
swear and affirm
that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge and perform
discharge and perform
all the duties incumbent on me.
all the duties incumbent on me
Please state your position.
As supervisor of the checklist.
as Swayze Parkway trustee,
According to the best of my abilities,
according to the best of my ability,
agreeable to the rules and regulations
agreeable to the rules and regulations
of this Constitution
of this Constitution
and the laws of the state of New Hampshire.
and the laws of the state of New Hampshire.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. And last but not least, any budget recommendations, committee members? Yeah, if you would mind standing over here. Okay, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I,
I, Anthony Swan,
Just later.
of Exeter, New Hampshire,
Exeter, New Hampshire.
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will bear faithful and true allegiance
that I will bear faithful and true allegiance
to the United States of America
to the United States of America
and the state of New Hampshire,
and the state of New Hampshire,
and will support the constitutions thereof.
and will support the constitutions thereof.
So help me God.
Help me God.
I
Just later.
Anthony Swan,
do solemnly and sincerely
do solemnly and sincerely
swear and affirm
swear and affirm
that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge and perform
discharge and perform
all the duties incumbent on me
all the duties incumbent on me
as budget recommendations committee member,
as budget recommendations committee member,
agreeable to the rules and regulations
agreeable to the rules and regulations
of this Constitution
of this Constitution
and the laws of the state of New Hampshire.
and the laws of the state of New Hampshire.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Fire up the room.
Bring me some.
Thank you, Andy, and congratulations to all elected officials. And now we come to the time of year after the election where the Select Board holds reorganization of the board and elects chair, vice chair, and clerk. So at this time, I would entertain a nomination for chair.
Mr. Chair,
Selectwoman Cowan.
I would love to make a nomination. We have been very well served by your leadership during this pandemic and these last 2 years, and I would love you to accept the renomination to serve another term.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any other nominations? And seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
Congratulations, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
We have a busy night, but Selectwoman Cowan, I appreciate your words, and I'm honored and humbled by the trust and confidence that the board has in me. I thank you. So at this time, I would like to nominate Amali Cowan to serve as vice chair.
I'll second.
We have a motion, a second, and are there any other nominations? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion, a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. And now I would seek a nomination for clerk.
I will nominate Julie Gilman to serve as clerk.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other nominations? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Thank you, everybody. It's an honor this evening to have everybody here tonight for the swearing in of our new Exeter Police Department Deputy Chief, Timothy Joshua McCain, and I believe you like to be called Josh, if I remember correctly from when we met. A special moment for you and your family and the rest of the department. Mr. Dean, I think before we call Chief Poulin up, you had a few words to...
Yes, I just wanted to formally offer my welcome to Timothy Joshua McCain as our Deputy Police Chief. One of the favorite things I see about this appointment is that we've got a Blue Hawk in our midst coming back to Exeter after serving dutifully in Portsmouth over the last several years, so welcome. Appreciate your service and appreciate your expectant service to the town of Exeter. Wish you all the best of luck. Thank you. And at that moment, I'll introduce Police Chief Poulin. He's got a few words that he wants to say, and then we'll proceed with the swearing in.
Thank you, Russ. Tonight is going to be the first example of our new procedures for bringing aboard new officers and employees publicly in front of the town. Thank you to the Select Board, Town Manager, and our Town Clerk, Andy Kohler, for their accommodations tonight. We're excited to welcome and congratulate our new Deputy Chief of Police, Timothy Josh McCain. Josh lives in Portsmouth with his wife, Sarah, and son, Colton. He enjoys coaching Little League Baseball and youth football. Josh grew up in Stratham and graduated from the Exeter High School. He then went on to serve 4 years in the United States Marines. Josh actually began his law enforcement career here with the Exeter Police Department from 2001 to 2004. He spent the last 18 years working for the Portsmouth Police Department, where he was promoted to the rank of lieutenant. Josh speaks highly of the people he worked with and for at the Portsmouth Police Department. He remains grateful for the opportunities of being in charge of numerous divisions, to include communications, training, and recruitment. Josh holds a master's degree in investigations and is also an executive commander on the Seacoast Emergency Response Team, a position that he cherishes greatly and one that he will continue to hold. Deputy Chief McCain's values and goals are in line with the mission of the Exeter Police Department. We are strong believers in taking care of the men and women of the department. We're providing improved training, education, and mental health self-awareness so that they in turn can best take care of you. We believe in the necessity to have a strong police and community bond, to not only achieve that bond, but to continuously grow and nurture that bond through trust and transparency. We're going to have a busy year at EPD with added implementation of a body-worn camera program and the quest for national accreditation. We have full faith that Deputy Chief Josh McCain will hit the ground running. Offer his professional input, thoughts, and ideas, which will help us attain these goals and much, much more in the years to come. Now we will witness Josh swearing into his oath of office. This will be followed by the pinning of his badge by his son, Colton.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Timothy Josh McCain,
I, Timothy Josh McCain,
of Portsmouth, New Hampshire,
of Portsmouth, New Hampshire,
do solemnly swear and affirm
do solemnly swear and affirm
that I will bear faithful and true allegiance
that I will bear faithful and true allegiance
to the United States of America
to the United States of America
and the state of New Hampshire,
and the state of New Hampshire,
and will support the constitutions thereof.
and will support the constitutions thereof.
So help me God.
So help me God.
I, Timothy Joshua McCain,
I, Timothy Joshua McCain,
do solemnly and sincerely
do solemnly and sincerely
swear and affirm
swear and affirm
that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge and perform all the duties incumbent on me as Deputy Chief of Police,
all the duties incumbent on me as Deputy Chief of Police,
according to the best of my abilities,
according to the best of my abilities,
agreeable to the rules and regulations
agreeable to the rules and regulations
of the Constitution,
and
enforce the laws
enforce the laws
of the state of New Hampshire.
of the state of New Hampshire.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Congratulations, welcome back, and thank you.
Welcome aboard again.
Thank you, Chief.
Now you can go have a party.
Nice to meet you.
All the support. Glad. No. That's wonderful. Community, something like it.
All right.
Okay. Back to Select Board business now. Next on the agenda are the bid openings for the fire SCBA equipment and also the engine 5 replacement. Mr. Dean, do you have the bids?
I'm sorry?
Do you have the bids?
Yes. SCBA
Okay.
and this is engine 5.
I'm going to put engine 5 between us for a minute.
Right here. I swear it's a piece of the engine.
Okay.
Oh, am I supposed to write this?
Okay. Madam Clerk, the first bid for the SCBA, the self-contained breathing apparatus replacement, is from 3M Scott Safety in Monroe, North Carolina. That's the manufacturer. The dealer's name is Industrial Protection Services out of Salem, New Hampshire. And the final delivered cost of the SCBA replacement is $269,843. That's $269,843. Okay. Madam Clerk, the second bid for the SCBA self-contained breathing apparatus replacement is from the manufacturer MSA from Cranberry Township, Pennsylvania. The dealer's name is Firematics Supply Company in Milford, Mass. The final delivered cost of the SCBA replacement is $374,308. That's $374,308.
Thank you.
Is this still the S?
No, this is for the...
And we need to make a motion on this one?
Yep.
Right.
Mr. Chair, I move to forward the SCBA bids to the police chief, the fire department for review and recommendation.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Okay. Madam Clerk, this is a bid for the 1500 GPM pumper. The manufacturer is E1 Fire Apparatus from Ocala, Florida. The dealer is Greenwood Emergency Vehicles, based out of North Attleboro, Massachusetts. The final delivered cost of the unit is $650,000. This is the only bid for this piece of equipment, so I would entertain a motion to submit the bid to Chief Wilking.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Great. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Next on our agenda is public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to come in and make comment to the Select Board. We do ask, though, if your comment is relative to any of our agenda items, you wait until that agenda item comes up. So at this time, I'll pause for a moment and ask anybody who would like to make public comment.
Is it an agenda item or?
I'm sorry?
Andrew Elliott, Washington Street. Just a quick comment. Congratulations, everyone, for re-election and the new chief police. The deputy chief.
Yes, thank you.
So this is just about what I can do next to move Washington Street along. Obviously, it didn't pass in the elections. Not surprising, we didn't have any support from you folks. So I believe that that was because you wanted to do the right thing and do it the right way and go through a process that wasn't through a citizen's petition. So I'm wondering if there's a possibility to get on the agenda to discuss what the next steps are, given that it's been about a year I've been talking to you folks. And also to just thank the 900 plus people that voted for it. Without the support, it's a third of the voters, so I thought that was pretty good considering. Yeah, so that's the comment. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Elliott. I will, we usually don't comment back and forth during public comment, but out of courtesy, at our next meeting, DPW Director Jennifer Perry, I believe Mr. Dean will be here to talk about ongoing DPW projects. Is that correct?
She's scheduled to give an update on projects, yes.
And while that is not an ongoing project, certainly I would be willing to have a conversation with her and follow back with you in the next couple of weeks. Just to keep a conversation going with you, I'll make that commitment to you. But again, the board would like to hear her update on the ongoing projects. And then I'm willing to speak with her about your specific concerns, and I'm happy to follow back with you. Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. Seeing none, we'll jump to proclamations and recognitions. We don't have any formal proclamations this evening. However, if the board will indulge me, I have a list of all of the volunteers that worked at the polls last Tuesday that Andy Kohler, the town clerk, gave me. And if the board will indulge me, I would like to read the list of names and just thank, acknowledge, and recognize the number of hours, particularly this year, that these folks logged in, and I believe that this recognition is deserved. So I'm going to try to pronounce everybody's name correctly, and I apologize up front if I get it wrong. We have Vanessa Lazar, Pat DeMartile, Cheryl Turner Elwell, Karen Moyer, Diana Papageorge, Seth Shacer, Lois Lilienthal, Lynn McLaren, Denise Leonard, Karen Dudra, Gwen Kenny, Janice Cowan, Carol Smith, Ann Campbell, Cynthia Fry McComber, Martha McKenty, Diane Day, Leslie Haslam, John Haslam, James Hartnett, Heather War, Lindsay Sonnet, Stacy Penna, and Dan Chartrand. I'd also like to thank Selectwoman Cowan and Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf for putting in a mammoth day and evening, and also our moderator, Kate Miller, for a job well done. Thank you.
And all deserve a round of applause.
Yes. Next on the agenda is the approval of the Town of Exeter regular meeting minutes of February 22nd, 2022. Selectwoman Belanger, obviously you weren't here, but we do have a quorum with the three of us, so I would first ask if there are any revisions or amendments to the minutes.
I saw none.
And seeing none, then I would entertain a motion to approve the Town of Exeter regular meeting minutes of February 22nd, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Aye.
Okay, 301. And we have two appointments this evening based on our interviews.
Sure. Mr. Chair, I move to approve Edward Contreras to the Budget Recommendations Committee.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
I'm sure he'll do a wonderful job, but because I wasn't part of the interview, I'm going to abstain.
Thank you. Passes 3-0 and one abstention.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve Joseph Alexander as an alternate member of the Historic District Commission with a term to expire 4/30/2024.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Again, I'm going to abstain because I wasn't part of the interview, but I'm sure he'll do a wonderful job.
Thank you. Passes 3-0 with one abstention. Thank you. And now we will move into our discussion items, the first of which is a recap of the town meeting held last Tuesday, March 8th. And Mr. Dean, I know you had a few things before we went through the warrant articles, but we also have a town moderator, Kate Miller, here. Kate, I don't know if you wanted to start with a few words, or?
No, you can go first. I'll introduce this by saying that we had a post-election debriefing latter part of last week, and led by our town moderator. So it was a very productive conversation, I thought. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kate.
Yes, thank you. So I'll say for my first town meeting to moderate, there was a nice steep learning curve. I learned lots of things in one day. So in addition to all those fabulous volunteers, I also want to recognize the town clerk who did an utterly fabulous job, and the assistant town clerk who was terrific, and the supervisors of the checklist. As everyone by now knows, there was a huge number of voters who came. So I want to thank the voters. We had a wonderful, wonderful turnout, which was terrific. And I think we registered about 99 new voters that day. So the supervisors of the checklist were also, working nonstop and pitching in other places too. So it was really a team effort. We had 2,600 ballots printed up because the last expectation for a town meeting was about 1,400 voters. Well, over 3,000 ballots were cast, so we did end up short, and our town clerk was creating what are called unofficial ballots. And one of the things we learned was we should print more ballots next time around. I think this is really not so much an unusual turnout, but probably the new normal. So I think we will be printing a lot more ballots to make sure we aren't caught short next time around. So we stamped every single one of those ballots, each page, to make sure that it was sort of official coming out of the copier. So we had, I think it was a total of 3,090 ballots that were cast. We had 319 absentee ballots. So it was a wonderful turnout. We're looking now at the midterm elections, which doesn't involve some of the same dynamics as a town election, but we will have another election for the primary, state and federal, in September, and then another general election in November. So we've got two more coming up. So we're gearing up. We had some ideas about how to speed up the absentee ballot processing to try to streamline that and get that done earlier. We do have some limitations on the number of supervisors of the checklist. We can't just throw extra people in there because it's a very complicated process. So our supervisors are looking at having another person able to assist, and we were able to bring in the assistant clerk to be able to help out in a pinch, which was great. Anything that voters can do to get registered before the actual election day, we're happy to register people when they come in, but there is a bit of a line often on voting day. So if people are thinking they might want to vote in the fall elections, please check the town website to see when they can do the registration, because we definitely want to make sure everybody gets a chance to vote if they can. The ballot clerks did a fabulous job. We didn't have much in the way of lines at the ballot clerks for checking people in, but we have had that in the past, particularly at the presidential election, and looking forward to the midterms, we anticipate we might see that again. In addition to adding more ballot clerks, there's an interesting technological breakthrough, I would call it, that the clerk and I are looking at, and we're going to get a demo scheduled. It's called an electronic poll book. So it's a very different process. There's full paper backup in the event of a power outage and all that kind of stuff, but it's so much quicker than, the ruler, the pen, the ID, the paper. This is getting an ID scanned, immediately a ticket printed out like a receipt, take it to a ballot clerk, get a ballot, and walk. So it's going to cut the amount of time down quite a bit. So we're taking a look at what would be involved in moving to that arrangement. What would the cost be? There would be some savings in volunteer time or paid ballot clerk time, time. So we want to try to get ahead of this and get this in place as soon as makes sense. So folks will be bringing back more information. As we look at any new upgrades to any of the voting process and the voter experience, I want to keep very much in the front of our minds, making things more accessible to vision impaired voters. We got very close to adopting an accessible voting system, only to find that there were some additional reviews that had to be done before we could implement it this year. So everything we look at, whether it's this electronic poll book or anything else, we want to sort of bake into that process, how does this work with folks who are vision impaired, to make sure that we're doing it all at the same time instead of trying to do it in pieces where we might not have everything mesh. So those will be a couple of ongoing initiatives. We're going to get more Sharpies to make sure there are plenty in the polls. We also realized that the booths were almost all filled during the peak times, and there were lots of peak times. So having additional greeters, people who are not necessarily handing out ballots, but are getting people into booths and helping them see where to go to feed their ballot, the party flow element of the whole voting process. We're going to look to try to bring in more folks. So anyone who's interested out in TV land in volunteering, please contact the town clerk, because we're always looking for more people. And getting some more folks in to be able to do that, I think, will help. We learned that anybody who's on the ballot shouldn't be working at the polls. And so we had very, very good teams. I mean, talk about how many people do you need to replace our chair and our clerk of our select board. When they couldn't work, we ended up with about 8 people covering their slots for the rest of the day. So we had pro tem select board members. We're going to be bringing in pro tem school board members and having either school board members at the polls to assist as election officials. So that would be an additional 5 elementary school board members and 3 from the co-op school district. So we're looking to try to bring in more folks, looking at automated options to try to see what can be more efficient. And let's see, anything else? Any questions in terms of anything that you observed or had questions about or thought could be tweaked to be improved?
No question.
I didn't observe much.
You were outside freezing with a sign.
I got a little bit colder each time you came out, though.
Oh my God, it was cold that day.
I'm just looking, you looked so cold. Does anybody, I have a couple of thoughts or questions, but I want to open to the board first.
I sent along my suggestions.
Yes.
Which I think that they were incorporated. And just, thank you to the voters and all of the participants and everybody who, we hand counted, I don't even know how many ballots. It was a lot of ballots, it felt like. But it was a really smooth process, and I feel very confident in our results.
Yeah, and I just had people asking why we ran out of ballots, but you answered that perfectly, so I'm fine.
We doubled our turnout.
I know.
Yes.
It's always good to hear from you.
It's the highest turnout that I've seen, and I've seen a lot.
Yeah.
For a town election.
Yes, yeah. So, but I think we have to get used to it. We can't think that was just unusual.
Yeah, I agree.
Plan on it. We'll make people airplanes out of the, leftover ballots or something.
There's one bill left, but there was the first bill on folded ballots. One of them saying, I think the one's coming up this week, says that we must hand count all folded ballots. And so, in a town this size, other towns have districts and wards, but we would be hand counting a lot of both.
Right. I think the town of Milford was looking at piloting beta testing a new ballot counting machine, and they realized they were going to have to confirm the machine count with a hand count that night. They're, I think, about the same size as the town of Exeter. They calculated that between the school and the town ballots, it was 100,000 votes that would have had to be hand counted. And Molly was there through the bloody end at midnight counting things. So they determined they couldn't do it because they could not require immediately after that time to have a whole night crew or continue those same people, and it would have taken at least 12 hours to do. So the hand counting from my experience is not more reliable, and it's certainly slower. I think sorting and counting ballots is what the moderator and the clerks are supposed to be doing at the town meeting. And we found that one thing the machines do pretty well is sorting and counting things. So I think it's a good use of technology to continue to use the vote counting machines.
Oh, yes. I've been there also.
So I'm excited by some of the technological advances we'll be making. I know I sat in, was it last summer, maybe a meeting for the vision impaired, so I'm excited for that. And also excited that we'll be ordering more ballots moving forward. I think that's the reality, and it's a good reality to have more people voting. This may be for the town meeting. I'll ask both of you, Mr. Dean, any word on new machines? Because I know these machines are old and...
I can certainly speak to that. Those are the machines that Milford was going to beta test. And we have this unusual arrangement where the Secretary of State is sort of in charge of overseeing elections. We implement it at a very, local level. But there's also this thing called the Ballot Law Commission, and they are the ones who approve voting devices and machines. So the Secretary of State has gotten bids for new vote counting machines, and the Ballot Law Commission had approved this beta test of one that was selected by the town of Milford. There were a number of different possibilities, and they picked one they thought was going to be a good bet. They were going to be our sort of bleeding edge of this new technology, and because of the requirement that the Ballot Law Commission imposed to have an immediate, right after the vote, a hand recount to double check. There may be other ways of doing that, doing a parallel side by side using the older machines and the newer ones, and then do a hand count with the sort of unofficial tally from the new machines. I think there are ways of getting around that. I know that the chair of the Ballot Law Commission, who's Attorney Brad Cook, said to his fellow members, we got to figure this out because we need to have a workable way to test this new arrangement. So it's in the process. I was hopeful that we would get a result from that at this election that would then be something the rest of us could, review and decide if we wanted to just pursue that ourselves. We're not quite there yet. We may be another, I'm hopeful to have it figured out for the fall elections, primary or the general election. But it may be at least a year away. But I think it's a good thing to watch, and we're keeping it. That's our sort of two-pronged approach. We want to look at the poll books for checking in voters. We want to look at what are the options for vote counting machines at the end of the process. And all through it, the best access for all voters.
Right. Thank you.
Excuse me. It's nice to hear that the Secretary of State's moving on this finally, because the town clerk has been budgeting for new machines because we'll have to pay for them. It's not something the state's going to give us. They'll require it, but we'll have to pay for it. She's been carrying this budget number for 10 years or more. And nothing has happened. They've not made a decision.
So I give a huge amount of credit to the town of Milford. Their town moderator, Peter Bavsalier, who I think has been the town moderator for like 30 years, he's really moving on this and doing the hard work of getting the bids, reviewing the different possibilities, choosing something to test and working with the Ballot Law Commission to get it done. I think it's awkward because we have these sort of many components that are involved, the local, the Secretary of State, and the Ballot Law Commission, and it's not always an easy process to have all those things sort of moving in the right direction and at the same time. It's sometimes out of sync. So I think there's definitely a press to get it done, and we're watching with great anticipation to see what town of Milford is going to show us.
Good.
And just one last question. I was outside from 6:30 to, I left an hour before you closed down, but I was out there for most of it, and I have to say you and your team did a wonderful job of keeping control and order as voters were walking in. So thank you for that. And it was very controlled and civil for the most part. There was some confusion, though, as to what is allowed in terms of passing out materials. Could you just briefly, walk us through what is allowed, where one can stand, and what your advice might be moving forward, or any changes you might make?
Sure. So what you're talking about is described in the laws as electioneering, so advocating for a person or a particular ballot initiative. And the laws give the moderator the right to define an area that's at least 10 feet wide leading to the polling place. So inside the polling place, no electioneering. And that means no placards, no T-shirts that are advocating, no hats that are advocating, nothing that's, a sign or something like that. So it's clear inside for the area that is, I'm going to refer to the area coming into the Talbot Gym as kind of like a funnel with the narrowest part. We have barricades on the side with folks able to hold up signs, but they're far enough away that people can pass through without having to look at them, talk to them, interact with them if they don't want to. And that was an area where we told folks they could not leaflet. We didn't want people sort of reaching out and obstructing that passageway with, giving people things. We also, further up on the funnel, sort of outlined an area with cones and said, in that sort of top of the funnel, no electioneering in that part. So really having a broad space where voters could come in, they wouldn't have to talk to anybody if they didn't want to. Out in the parking lot, we did allow folks who'd asked ahead of time for permission to see if they could leaflet in the parking lot. So we did have, I think it was 2 folks who were out there. For most of the day, they were getting, I think, just as cold as everybody else. And they were handing out things. And what they had were sort of stiff cardstock pieces of cardstock that advocated for particular changes to folks who were on the ballot. So a lot of folks were walking in with those. Because they were coming in as sort of information that they were carrying, as opposed to a sign that they were holding to try to influence other people, we didn't stop people from bringing those in to the building. It's pretty similar. I know my husband was looking for a list that he'd gotten in the mail saying, vote for these folks. These will be good people. If he'd taken it from our house and carried it in, it would have been pretty much the same thing. So voters are allowed to bring in, notes or information or things like that. It's all a question of degree. If they were handing out, big pieces of cardboard, then I would say no, that's an election sign. If it's a piece of cardstock that this big, okay. That big, not okay. You just have to figure out how to draw the line. So I think in the future, it's good to have a conversation with leafleters in advance. What is it you're planning on handing out, just to make sure that they understand what our expectation is. It's a tricky line to draw because this is public property, and the First Amendment says that voters have the right to petition their government for changes, and that's essentially what folks are doing. They're on public property at election time, and they're advocating. So I want to make sure I'm not infringing on people's First Amendment rights, but I also want to make sure I'm not having the voters feel harassed or deterred from coming into the polling place. So finding that balance is tricky. And I will say the people who were leafleting were respectful. They at one point had a car or truck with placards. And I said, you can have it parked there while you're voting, but once you're not voting, you have to move the truck. And they moved the truck after voting. So, I think it was a decent balance, but I imagine that every voting day is going to be its own sort of minuet, figuring out exactly where is the right place. And being clear and respectful is my goal, so that everybody understands kind of what the rules are.
There's one thing that used to happen in the past when we did have the kind of greeter that you were talking about, that they would go up and down as booths emptied and make sure when there was a Sharpie, and two, if anything was left behind that's like that, so it wouldn't be part of the influence.
Yeah, we were doing that on an informal basis. We didn't have people assigned to it, but yes, we were going through, putting in the Sharpies, taking out the paper. So yes, it is a good thing to sort of keep up your housekeeping of those voting booths, definitely.
Anything else from the moderator? Great, thank you, Kate. Appreciate it. Mr. Dean, did you want to walk through the ballot or some of the highlights? Obviously, all but one warrant article passed, with the exception of the citizens petition.
Right.
But there were some highlights that you wanted to
Sure, and I'm happy to hit the highlights. It was a successful warrant. In terms of the 3 bond issues that were put forward, which are the Webster Avenue Pump Station, the 10 Hampton Road purchase, and the West Side Drive Design and Engineering, all 3 of those passed with at least 73% of the vote, if not more. So that was a very good result for those 3 issues. And then the operating budget, the water budget, the general fund budget, the water budget, and the sewer fund budget all passed also with more than 70%. So we'll be implementing the operating budget. As you know, 2 positions in that budget were slated to go from part-time to full-time. One is in the Human Resources Office. The other is in the Natural Resource Planner, that position within the Planning and Building Department. So also it included 2 new firefighters, which we will be hiring in July of this coming year. So we have our work plan set out for us. Articles 10 through 12, which were the police agreement, the fire agreement, and the Department of Public Works agreement, also passed. The lowest vote total there was percentage-wise was 76%. So 77% for the police and 80% for the fire. So passed by wide margins, which is really great to see. The other items were the CIP items. Engine 5 passed with 74.6% of the vote. The SCBA equipment, which we opened earlier, 81.3% of the vote. The Rains Barn project passed with 74.8% of the vote. The police body cameras, 77%. And this was a theme throughout the warrant. Most of the articles passed with 70% or more. The sewer capacity rehabilitation project, 76.9%. The Parks Improvement Fund got 80.4% in favor. And then a few more CIP items, the Highway Truck 9 replacement, 77.4%. The DPW hot box replacement, 75.1%. The intersection improvement plan, 66.6%. Then we had a hiccup with the DPW complex design that actually did not pass. It was 49.3% in favor, 50.7% opposed. So that was the one article that did not pass from the main CIP article list. Fire Department Car 3 replacement, 73.2%. The facilities condition assessment, which we talked a lot about during the budget process, 57.3% in favor. The Jeep Patriot 65 replacement, 54.7%. The bike pedestrian plan, 67.1%. And then our customary articles, the sick leave expendable trust passed with 76%, and the snow and ice deficit fund passed with 82.2%. Then we get into the last few articles on the warrant. The Swayze Parkway Trust Fund transfer passed with 87.4%. We will now have a new town hall revolving fund, which will be great to have. That passed with 84.2%. The Arts and Culture Commission as agents to expend from the donations fund, 81.2% in favor. The Community Power Program, which will be a project the Energy Committee will shepherd, that's 83.2% in favor. And then one article I'm sure we'll be talking about, the Swayze Parkway closure, 62.7% in favor, 37% opposed. So that article did pass as written. And then the final article was the petition on Washington Street, which we heard Mr. Elliott speak to earlier. That did not pass, 32% in favor, 68% opposed. So that's the warrant.
And again, we want to thank the voters. It was a big voter turnout. There were a lot of very good warrant articles that passed that I think are going to bring a lot of value to the town. Mr. Dean, could you briefly speak to Article 33? That's the Swayze Parkway closing of the road. If you could just walk through next steps, because of course the warrant article did include what the next 2 contingencies would be. If you've had an opportunity to speak with council, that would be great if we could get an update.
Right. So there are 2 articles I could speak to updates. One is the on Swayze Parkway. We have given that over to legal counsel, and they've reached out to Mr. Tom Donovan of the Charitable Trust Division to inform Mr. Donovan of the vote, and we'll start our next steps from there as far as what needs to be done. Ultimately, we know we have to petition the probate court and go through charitable trust, so we're going one step at a time, charitable trust first, and then the petition would be drawn up for probate.
Has council offered how long of a process this may be in terms of time?
I don't have that answer for you. I think it will depend upon the length of time it will take charitable trusts to work through their process.
Okay.
And probate court was sort of an undetermined amount of time. It's not in the courts these days because of COVID. They've been backed up quite a bit. He didn't think that probate court was the same kind of backup, but he didn't give me a firm time window, so it could be a few months.
Okay. And is Public Works working behind the scenes of how they're going to plan this out should everything move seamlessly with the trust and the probate court?
Yeah, I have some feedback from Jay Perkins, our highway superintendent, already, and we also talked actually today. The assistant town manager and myself talked about if we do need to fund something, that maybe ARPA funds could be used for, whether it's a gate or a Jersey barrier or something like that we decide on doing.
Okay.
So.
And I think the board would agree. I think when this process is final and we know one way or another that it's gone through the charitable trust and the probate court and we're going to move forward as the voters have asked, if at our select board meeting when we talk about next steps, if we have the Swayze Park trustees join us collaboratively as we have along the way, I think that would be important.
Yep, we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
The other article I just wanted to mention quickly is the 10 Hampton Road purchase. My understanding is that the property will be vacant by the end of the month, and so we are working diligently with Title Pro, with legal counsel, to work towards setting up a closing as soon as we can on that. So the way we do that is basically we could pay for that out of current proceeds of the town's operating account, and when we borrow the funds, we would just reimburse ourselves. So we felt that it was a good opportunity to get into that property sooner if we close sooner on the property. So just to let you know that that's moving pretty quickly at this point.
Good. And just to keep on your radar, once Parks and Rec have moved out, we should start to talk about what the plan is or some options for the property that they're moving out of.
Yes, definitely. And actually, the Parks and Rec director and myself talked today about the parking lot and, whether we talked about the idea of putting some gravel down as maybe an interim step before a more permanent parking solution is found. So we're having those conversations.
The parking lot on Court Street or the parking lot at the...
Parking lot on the new property or on the 10 Hampton.
10 Hampton Road. Any public comment relative to the election of warrant articles or Mr. Clement?
Good evening, Don Clement, 5 Thelma Drive. In regards to Article 33, and I assume you all know that certain procedures have to be followed for the discontinuing of a road or a portion of a road. Did the town adhere to the state regulations, the SRAs for that? Do you know? Can you reassure me?
I couldn't speak to that.
I don't.
Do you mean as far as the article goes?
Yeah, there are certain procedures dictated by state statutes that have to be done in order to properly put on a ballot the discontinuing of a road or a portion of a road, which was part of the language of the article.
I should know this by heart from both sides. I believe when a road is discontinued, it's a decision of the select board. I'm just trying to remember, because there's discontinuing and then there's just taken away. There's 2 different levels there.
Again, I'm just asking if I know there's certain procedures, and I don't have them with me at this point. I can look them up. You're much better suited to look them up. I just want to know that those procedures were followed, because it's a very specific process that has to be done. And followed, I should say.
My comment would be that we were guided by legal counsel through the whole process of drawing up this article and presenting it to the voters. So I would imagine that we would be able to execute the discontinuance.
And I think that's why he insisted on using the word discontinuance versus closing.
That's exactly right.
And that creates the need to follow the state statutes when you use the word discontinue, because discontinue is a very specific action that is talked about in the state statutes. Also, the fact that after discontinuing, after the vote, I believe, and again, I'm not, you can ask legal counsel, there's a period of time where someone aggrieved of the decision can file against that vote. File
First I'm hearing of it, so I'd have to look into
again,
it.
there are many RSAs, as we know. Some are very difficult. I just want to understand that, all those were followed properly. So it's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clement. So, Mr. Dean, I know you and I sat through many conversations with Attorney Mitchell and Selectwoman Cowan. You did as well. And I think in terms of your first concern, in terms of following all of the procedures and discontinuing the road, again, we took advice from counsel who put a lot of research into presenting what we ultimately wrote. But your question about whether or not the aggrieved party can, I guess you're talking about an appeal of some sort?
I believe. Sorry.
Yeah.
I believe that's the word it's used. Yeah.
Okay, because that's not anything that came up, but certainly, Mr. Dean, we can follow up with Attorney Mitchell on that. And I'm sure this will be on the agenda many more times. Any other public comment? Mr. Dean, did you have anything else before we move on?
No, I don't think so, other than to say just thank you to the voters who supported our financial program, and it certainly helps us go forward.
Indeed. Thank you. The next agenda item is protocols of committee meetings, and I asked Mr. Dean to put this on so that we could speak briefly about our committees that we represent as select board members. During the pandemic, obviously, we met via Zoom. We've seen the numbers of committees, the number of vacancies have increased. People have either stepped down, retired, or moved out of town. That's been a big problem lately, people moving. But folks became comfortable, obviously, meeting via Zoom. It was allowed due to the governor's emergency order. But alas, once that was lifted in June of 2021 under the RSA, we do need to meet in person. Committees do need to meet in person. However, one can Zoom in if they are not physically able to make the meeting due to a circumstance. Mr. Dean, what's the exact word on that?
If it's not reasonably practical for them to attend.
Right. So what we've seen is more committee members than not are wanting to Zoom in, and of course, in order to hold a public hearing, public committee meeting, you have to have a physical quorum. And I've noticed just in the last 4 or 5 months, there have been some committees where there's no quorum at all, whether it be virtual or in person, or some are not meeting the guidelines. So, Mr. Dean, if you could just walk through some of the nuances of 91A with respect to a quorum. And then I think two things, either you or Assistant Manager Roy can send out an email to all of the chairs. Again, I know we've done that in the past, but just reminding them of the right to know, the RSA 91A, and also physically being present, having a quorum present, because obviously you can't vote if you don't have a quorum. Probably shouldn't even be meeting if you don't have a quorum, and if you do vote, those votes may or may not be binding. And then also as select board members, we can do our job by reminding our committees of the quorum regulation, and also maybe stopping a meeting or stopping voting if there's no quorum. So I don't know, any other board members have any thoughts?
No, I think it's a good idea to send a memo out to everyone. New committees especially need to learn, and even if a select person is there, they still might not understand what you're saying. They're a little dense, actually, that one RSA, and it gets jiggled every year. I've got another thing going on about it this year. So, we need to keep our eye out for when things need to be corrected, but I think also having a memo that each person gets will help. And I wouldn't just stop with those three that you start. I'd just put the whole RSA out there, and they can, because sometimes committees want to go into a non-public session, but there really isn't a reason for it other than they just feel like it. So they really should know that there's only certain causes that
Certain
relate.
exceptions,
Yeah.
right, under the law. The comments that I had were basically that there were two things that we observed. One was that the physical body must be present, quorum of the physical body must be present at the physical location, but also when somebody cannot make a meeting because it's not reasonably practical, the law states that any reason that such attendance is not reasonably practical shall be stated in the minutes of the meeting. So I think that's one thing that we need to make sure is being followed up on. Another item is that the roll call voting, and also that each individual that is zooming in has to state that they're alone in the room or that there are, dogs and cats and children around. But it is part of the statute that they're supposed to cite that who they're with and if they're alone or not.
And they have to have their face on screen when voting occurs.
Yeah, and I did pick up on one committee that was working toward this, and again, I'm one of I wrote an article about virtual meetings and sort of the pluses of those. So I'm not trying to be hard.
I remember it well.
not trying to be hard about this, but there was one committee meeting that seemed to indicate that the people on Zoom, the committee members on Zoom, weren't voting members, and that somehow was an option for them. And that's actually not. I mean, if you're a voting member of a committee and you're on Zoom, you're there to vote. So you can abstain on everything if you want to, but it doesn't take away your status as a voting member of the committee. So to your point, Mr. Chairman, yes, I think a memo going out to all the boards and committees and commissions makes a lot of sense. And I know 91A isn't always, I mean, it is a dense statute. It seems to get longer every single year with things added to it. And I don't think that we're trying to whip up on anybody. I think we're just trying to get it square so that as people are utilizing the technology, we can support them in that and make sure that we're getting all the things documented that we're supposed to.
I ask? So, you said something, so it made me ask, if you're an alternate, you're not voting, so your video doesn't have to be on, is that correct? Or is that incorrect?
The law doesn't speak to whether your video needs to be on or not. It doesn't specifically say that is the case. I don't think the law's expanded to that point yet.
What's your thought?
But you have to be able to be heard.
Yes.
That is the rule. So, and if you're an alternate member and you're not voting as part of the meeting because you're an alternate, I would think that would prevail.
Okay.
That you would not have to vote.
And just one follow-up, if I may, Mr.
Please.
Chair. I think it's important to know what a quorum is, and that might sound silly, but if there are vacancies, my understanding is that the quorum doesn't change. Is that correct?
Right, that's right. The quorum
I don't think everyone
is set.
understands that.
Okay. So we can make a note of that and include that in the memo.
I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Right.
I think that's exactly right. I mean, that's certainly a problem that the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee has been having. We don't have enough members who show up reliably. And so, if you have a bunch of people waiting on Zoom who haven't had their water abatements dealt with in months, what do you do? So I think if folks are worried about quorum issues, one thing that would be really helpful is to maybe volunteer for the committee, because we do have a lot of vacancies.
So that brings us to the question. I mean, if you go through the report, the latest report that Mr. Dean's office produced, there are a lot of vacancies.
Yeah, there are.
In almost all of the committees. So, I mean, is it something where we need to look at whether or not we have too many
committees?
Not too many committees, but too many chairs on the committee, too many positions.
Yeah.
So something like a water sewer. I'm sorry, if you've had 5 people.
We've had 5 people for as long as I can remember. So maybe the committee should be 5 people.
Yeah, you could look at reducing the committee down. There was a time when the Water Sewer Committee was actually only 3 members.
Yep.
It was several years ago, but it was 3 before actually I should say this, actually it was the town meeting that increased the number of members, so it would require a town meeting vote to reduce it.
Okay.
And
really? Oh,
yes.
I didn't know that. Thank you.
We are voting tomorrow at the State House on allowing public meetings to be conducted virtually. If you'll hang on a second, I'll tell you what the recommendation is. I believe it's recommended to not pass.
Say that again?
I believe the bill is recommended not to pass.
To do what? What would the bill do? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Allow for virtual meetings.
Got it, okay.
Stuck
Like, there's
in
a
the
lot of bills.
legislature
Which
again.
one?
No, it'll just change it back to only one person can be absent and we must be able to hear them. And I had submitted testimony about that one, which they admit that they understood but didn't make any difference in their opinion in the end.
So, Selectwoman Belanger, one of our goals last year was to work on an overview of our committees and boards, and Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf and I worked on that, and we gave a presentation to the Select Board sometime in the fall. And in one of our next meetings, we'll be revisiting a revised document based upon Selectwoman Gilman, Selectman Brown at the time, and Selectwoman Cowan's suggestions. But one of the things that we all agreed on is perhaps utilizing the assistant town man, doesn't have to be Melissa, but for all of the newly appointed members, going through an orientation or an onboarding, meeting, respective town staff with whom they'll be working, maybe meeting their chair, going through 91A and all of that. So
great idea. I did watch that meeting.
Thank you. And I would also say that maybe just having, working out some way that we can meet with committees and do a 91A training. I know years ago, Mr. Dean, the NHMA actually came to Exeter in the public library. Mr. Clement, you were there.
Via Zoom.
And they did a great 91A training.
They have a rolling webinar
Okay.
on 91A that's easily accessible. So if people we can promote that and have people sign up for it, it would be great.
You know what? And if it's a webinar, maybe work with Bob during request that all committees and boards put that on their agenda, depending upon how long the video is. If they make that as part of their agenda for a half hour and watch it here live, so we know they've watched it.
Yeah, it would be very valuable.
It is.
Any public comment?
Again, Don Clement. First of all, I just want to congratulate Mrs. Belanger, Mrs. Gilman, and Mr. Papakostas on their election. And also want to actually thank Selectwoman Cowens for her continued service. Yes, the thing with the quorum is what came to my attention, and I actually sent an email or a text to the chair of the board that I was watching a Water and Sewer Committee last Wednesday, I believe. And at the start of the committee, there were only, I think, Selectwoman Cowens was there and Mr. Kelly. And they were reviewing people who came in and asking for abatements. And sometime early during the meeting, someone came in via Zoom. And Mr. Kelly announced that now we have a quorum, we can vote. And they proceeded to vote. My contention is there was not a quorum there. Quorum for that committee is 4, not 3. And that all of those votes to grant abatements really didn't happen. The meeting couldn't happen. So I think that has to all be redone. Those abatements. I feel sorry for the people who had to go through the process. Maybe they don't have to go through the process again, but the vote has to be before a quorum has to take the vote to make this a legal vote. So I think it's, especially, I get concerned when we're talking about money, and here we're talking money on abatements, but there are other decisions that are made that require a quorum. And I think having some kind of education is a good point. Years and years ago, when you went on a committee, there were people on the committee who'd been there for a while, and they taught you the ropes. Now we have so many new committees, a lot of these people haven't been exposed to the workings of these state statutes and so forth. So I think education, orientation has to work, and hopefully trying to get more people to serve on committees, because we certainly are an awful lot of things going on in town, a lot of good things. The town is growing. We're now up to over 15,000, Mr. Dean, or about close to 16,000? 16,000. So hopefully there's enough people out there that will, will contribute some time. But anyways, thank you for bringing this up. I think it's something that's, has kind of slipped in the last few years, and I think we need to bring it back above board. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Clement. Okay, any other comments before we move forward? Question for you, I guess. How often, water and sewer don't meet monthly, right?
Once every quarter.
Once every quarter?
Yeah.
And I don't watch them regularly, I'm sorry, but do you usually have a quorum, or at least 4 people?
We do usually have a quorum.
Okay. I don't think we need to bring back all of the applicants for an abatement, but it might not be a bad idea to maybe talk to the chair of the department of just revoting, getting 4.
Yeah, I can.
And where I'm coming from with that is not so much.
Well, I don't want a disgruntled
That's it.
citizen to lodge a serious complaint or make these people not get their abatements that we voted on.
I just want them to get their abatements.
Yeah,
That's.
So I think, I think what we should probably do is maybe, Mr. Dean, when was the last time we had more than 5 members on that committee?
Some time ago.
Does it make sense to reduce the size of the committee?
We'd have to go to town meeting.
Right. There was a town meeting vote that established
That established it at
7 members.
Well, we just missed that.
Put it on the list.
Could I throw an idea out?
Yeah.
I don't know if this will work or not. I understand the board gave the water and sewer the ability to vote on them. Is it possible that if they don't have a quorum, they can have the discussion and then
do a, we could certainly do a.
Possible?
Shouldn't really have any discussion if it's something you're going to vote on.
They can't vet something?
Not without a quorum.
Well, then they would have to come to the select board if they don't have, I don't know.
Well, that's the other option that we have to look at, because at one point, we didn't have the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee to make those decisions on.
Well, what we did was we always had the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee, but we
just took their advice.
Well, but I don't even know that maybe they did deliberate. I think it was before my time, but I remember, the select board trying to play detective and asking all of these questions about.
Yeah, I thought we did talk about it.
Yeah, oh yeah.
The recommendations.
Yeah, and we used to do that. I am happy to go to the chair and say, hey, we need to, revote on this stuff, which would be fine. He's not in the country right now.
Right.
But he'll be back soon. And so he can call a meeting, we can notice it, we can just, I don't even think that we would need to have the applicants come forward with the abatement requests, because we've already done all of that. We can just review the material and revote, I think.
So you would be confirming your prior action?
Yeah, which is what happens all the time anyway. We deliberate but we also, set up clear parameters as a committee that we recommend it to the select board of, a once in 10-year abatement. Here's the proportion that you get. Here's what happens when you take it. Do you want to take it? Yes? Okay, we'll abate it. And the only thing that's a little bit of a wiggle room is whether or not there was sewer, if the water was discharged, did it go back into the sewer? If not, we'll abate that entire portion. So, that's the piece that we really discuss a lot of the times. And then there's a different proportion based on if it was operator error, like something that you should have seen and you should have had fixed. But we've honestly been really lenient about that because, especially in the pandemic, it's been incredibly difficult to get plumbers out. So, sometimes sure, it's your fault and you've been trying to fix it for how long? And so I'd be happy to work on that. But I don't know in what process the abatements are.
Well, don't they show up on the next quarter's bill, correct?
Yes, but I don't know if there's anybody who would have been holding out, and so there's, I mean, I guess we could do that. We could say, okay, well, you know, if you didn't pay it, or you've been waiting to pay your bill so that you have some interest or something, like we could abate that portion between now, you know, last Wednesday and whenever we revote.
Yeah, that can be waived. The interest can be waived.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that that's fine.
And I think, you know, the meeting was last Wednesday, so it's not even a week old.
Yeah.
You know, once Chair Kelly comes back, I mean, the sooner, I want to make sure these folks don't have any obstacles.
I do too, and I also would love it, especially Dawn. I know that you have a serious interest in water issues in our town. It would be great if you could volunteer for this committee and put in an application.
I've done some 25 years of volunteering. It's time for me to move on to the younger people in town.
All right. But you sure are keeping an eye on us so that we are.
It's a good thing.
But it would be nice if you could maybe put out some feelers for some volunteers.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thanks.
So we'll work on that.
Okay. Chief Poulin, you've been patiently waiting to give us an update, which we anxiously await.
So I'll give you a brief update on the police department, where we are right now. In the area of training and recruitment, we'll be working on getting our new deputy chief acclimated to his new roles. We have a new officer hire slated to be onboarded in May with an academy entrance in June. Dispatch is fully staffed. Our newest dispatcher, Ashley LaRoche, is going solo starting today and will do great. We continue to be at the forefront with all of our officers having gone through ethics, de-escalation, and implicit bias training. Officers have also been cycling through our newest training edition, which is a fully immersive training simulator. A special thanks to Director Jen Perry and her crew for allowing us a room to use at Public Works for this. In the interest of mental health, all of our officers and dispatchers have attended a wellness one-on-one training session with Dr. Sawyer. We will schedule these visits yearly and add more individually as needed with critical incident debriefings, etc. We continue to be the only New Hampshire Police Department to have achieved certification as a one-mind agency in the realm of improved mental health response and training for our folks. Our community engagement programs will be ramping back up now that restrictions have loosened. Coffee with a Cop will be held several times a month at various locations. Our next one is scheduled at McDonald's on March 23rd at 9 a.m. Our officers are also reading this week at Main Street School for Read Across America. The deputy chief and I will be reading tomorrow. Our RAD instructors will begin hosting more rape, aggression, and defense courses. These classes are always free. As I deliver this update, Detective Page has just finished a fraud presentation at the Exeter Library with the New Hampshire Attorney General's office. And also, I would remind everyone to please check our Facebook page for more information on these types of presentations and to get the most up-to-date community programs we're offering. We're continuing to work with Dave Sharples regarding the space and needs assessment of the public safety complex. In the near future, the fire chief and I will be looking to hold some public meetings where we can all positively engage and hear from the people about their ideas or concerns and helping answer any questions up to this point. We'd like to say a special thank you to all the voters who supported our police contract and the warrant article on body cameras. We fully believe that these are one of the most important pieces of equipment that an agency and an officer can have, and that they will undoubtedly become a standard staple in all policing agencies going forward. In closing, we can proudly announce that thanks to Senator Shaheen, with the help of Sergeant Brian Hanna, Assistant Town Manager Melissa Roy, and Town Manager Russ Dean, the entire body-worn camera implementation program for EPD is slated to be completely funded as a congressional spending approved project.
Wow,
great.
terrific.
Does anyone have any questions?
That's wonderful news, Chief.
Excellent.
Thank you. I don't have a question. I just have a, I know this came up during the budget meetings, but the budget line for the new way that you're communicating on social media, I see it. I go on Facebook every once in a while, but what I've seen is amazing. So I think that's been a great enhancement. I think it's wonderful that you report both good and bad. It's very thorough. It's informative. I think it's a great upgrade. And Mr. Dean, I think maybe as a town we need to look at using that for a town.
You know, I said during the budget process that the way the police department was sort of going about its communications program, and we actually have someone here who is helping to facilitate that, Mr. Schreiber, and
He looked familiar.
and basically, we were and are looking at that, the way that's being done as a model for perhaps the entire organization. So that may be something we bring forward in the coming budget process for 2023. But we're receiving the same feedback you are, and Mr. Glowacki, who's our appointed communications coordinator, is taking special attention to that as well. So I think we'll be able to see more of that as we evolve the program.
Great.
Yeah, you've become our pilot program, so to speak. And I won't repeat what Nico said, but that's what I had wanted to say. I am very impressed with that whole process. It's great. What a great community service. Good and bad, it's great. Thank you.
Yes, and it is Schreiber News Agency, and Jason Schreiber is here taking notes as we speak.
Selectwoman Cow, did you have anything? No? Selectwoman Gilman?
No. I want to know where those goats were trying to get, though.
That was great.
A big green field, I'm sure. Or
Well, I could
McDonald's.
use them, actually. I've been trying to figure out a way to get the Winter Street Cemetery mowed with less damage to stones. Get me some goats.
But they're good. They'll do great. They'll love it. Tell them that's their fine first.
Yeah, they have to chew up the cemetery first.
That's their payback.
Chief, thank you very much for the update.
Thank you.
And thanks for all the work that the department does.
Thank you all.
And come back and
Congratulations
visit.
as well.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is an update with some good news. We have a memo in our packet from Melissa Roy, the Assistant Town Manager, HR Director, who's been working with Jennifer Perry since April of 21 with Congressman Pappas and Senator Shaheen, and we have an update on the Squamscott River Sewer Siphon Project.
Good evening, everybody.
Melissa.
Thank you for having me. So we got really good news from Congressman Pappas's office this week, and that Congressman Pappas's office was able to advocate for us, the town of Exeter, the sewer siphons project for the Squamscott River Siphon project, for $600,000. We had been waiting to hear if the federal budget would be approved, and they called us this week and said that we expect to receive that. So we're very excited. You can see in your memo, you have this grid that shows that the project was originally slated to be conducted in FY20, was approved in a warrant article for $1.4 million. Unfortunately, due to the conditions of the siphons underneath the river, the project had to be stopped and reevaluated. In doing so, it was determined that the best course of action going forward would be to drill 3 new siphons under the river as to not disrupt that. So the new cost is $2.6 million, of which 1.4 has already been approved. So we have an additional 1.2 million of funding. We, of the original article, have only spent $422,000 because we had started to do the planning, design, and permitting of the original project, and now pivoted to this new project. So we have $977,750 from the original warrant. We will be receiving $600,000 from Congressman Pappas through the congressional directed spending. And with this, Jen and her team down at DPW applied for there are a lot of acronyms here, so bear with me. The New Hampshire DES Wastewater Infrastructure CWSRF ARPA grant. And that is a $180,000 grant that we don't have to pay back. So that leaves us $420,000 short of the new project price. And what we would like to recommend is using $420,000 of the $1.6 million that was given to, or will be given to the town for the ARPA funding. This qualifies under two different categories, water infrastructure as well as government services. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, that's great news.
It's really great news.
So I will say this, of the additional 1.2 million, we received $780,000 of alternative funding. So we worked really hard to try not to pass on the additional expense to the residents. And this is sort of the balance of what we need.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Roy or Mr. Dean?
Yeah, I was just going to, I just wanted to recognize the Assistant Town Manager again for all of her efforts in working with the Department of Public Works on securing the $600,000 from the Congressional Direct Spend. That was a really great get for the town, and also thanks to Congressman Pappas, who lobbied so hard on our behalf at the federal level as well. So,
Are we sending a thank you note?
Oh, we will.
I'd like to sign it.
Yeah, Congressman Pappas is actually doing an ad commercial on his different projects, and you'll hear my voice in that from a call that he made to the office last Friday. That Assistant Town Manager and myself took a call from the Congressman on Friday. So.
And Congressman Pappas will most likely be coming here somewhat soon, and you'll be all invited if you would like to join as well. So, no, we will be singing his praise for quite some time for this assistance.
Yeah, and I believe the project, you're probably interested in when we're finally going to get out to bid with this project, and we're anticipating around a May timeframe.
Okay.
So it won't be very long before we start digging into the particulars of bidding and finishing up that process.
Wow, that's great. Great turnaround.
Things move along in a good pace. I have one question
please,
for you, if
for me.
I could. There's a motion, a recommended motion, and the only thing I want to know does it need to be added that we also include the town manager would sign anything that needs to be signed? Or is there nothing that would be needed to sign?
I think that if you add that to the motion, I think it would be good. The main purpose of the motion tonight is to report back to DES that we've taken this vote.
Okay.
And so we can qualify ourselves for the $180,000. That's what they're waiting to see.
So is that adding that part of the motion, is adding that language to the motion necessary? Do we have to have another motion down the road, or is this it?
I would do it.
It probably wouldn't hurt to do it now.
It wouldn't hurt.
Okay.
Yep, it wouldn't hurt. And before you make the motion, because I see you're very anxious. It just seems like yesterday that Selectwoman Gilman and I joined you and Mr. Dean and Congressman Pappas' staff at Swayze Parkway was July or August? And he was enthused with this project from the get-go, and I was amazed at how well-versed he is with water and sewer and wastewater treatment. I thought that, he knew what he was talking about when he was asking questions of Director Perry, so I think you'd agree from the beginning. He's been very, very enthused, and also went out of his way to tell us how much he loved Swayze Parkway. And that was back when the road was closed. He felt it was a great place to have a meeting. So with that, Selectwoman Belanger, if you'd like to.
Oh, okay. My first motion. I move that the Select Board, as recommended by the Town Manager, authorize up to $420,000 from the town allocated ARPA funds to be used for the Squamscott River Sewer Siphon Project, and to authorize the Town Manager to sign any documents necessary to effectuate this authorization. This authorization completes the necessary approval needed for the total project costs.
Well, second.
Will that do it? Okay.
That will do it.
I think they got everything. As a motion and a second, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Thank you, Melissa.
Yes, last thing real quick is we also heard from Senator Shaheen's office that the third project that we asked for funding also received funding. So we will also be receiving $1.05 million towards Webster Ave, which we will come back at another time. But Senator Shaheen got support of 2 projects for us. So we're very, very thankful that we got 3 congressional directed spending projects funded. So just to let you know, we'll be coming back another day.
Great work.
Can I ask you, were we approached first, or did we look at, gather the information we needed to find all the money we can?
So in regards to congressional directed spending, we got an email and information saying if we wanted to apply for this funding. Jen, Stefan, and I worked really hard on putting all the information together. Darren helped. It was a big team effort. We had to get, the hospital sent letters, the chamber sent letters. I mean, it was a pretty big community effort in order for all of it to go through. We actually have received information to put requests in for FY23, which I'll be going to or listening to a meeting in the next week or 2. But I think that we picked projects that had a good, I don't want to use the word story, but were real and were willing, showed that the community was willing to put part of the process. We didn't go in and ask for full funding for any of it because we said that it was important for us to show that the community supported it as well, which I do think helped us.
And that was based on also some of the advice that we got from the senator's office was, and Representative Pappas, or Congressman Pappas's office was, to not necessarily shoot for the moon with these, so they could be looked at as realistic options for them to support. So that was part of the process.
And I'd also like to say to Jen Perry, Director Perry, and her team, Paul and Matt and Jen Mates at the time, one of the things that was needed was sort of shovel-ready projects, and DPW had already been preparing for what was needed, so that was very, very helpful to us.
And if memory serves me correctly, this came about in late March or early April of 21. And the beginning of March, yes. And you were given, you mentioned the team that worked, and it was a team. You had a week, didn't you?
I think we had 8 or 9 days to pull the initial information together, and then once we passed the first round, then we got a few more weeks to do the next one. But it was a pretty quick turnaround at first.
It was frantic. So if we start tomorrow, we'll be able to stretch out the process this time, maybe a little longer.
Yeah, it was a little last minute.
You brought up a good point, Mr. Dean. We met with both Congressman Pappas a couple times and then Senator Shaheen most recently, but one of the common themes was that they were impressed not only with our shovel-ready projects, but to the level that the voters had already voted and had skin in the game. And it wasn't just us asking for, 100%. And I mean, they spoke of this community and how passionate the voters were to make these improvements. And that was just really, it was impressive to hear from our senator and congressman.
Yes.
Thank you, Melissa. So next up, we have our clerk and state rep, all rolled up in one, Selectwoman Gilman, who's going to give us a legislative update.
Where to begin? I would ask everyone to look at the Selectman's packet because what's listed in here is, although there are some introductory parts, all the things that are listed in here were voted on last week. Anything that says ought to pass will now go on to the Senate. Anything that says ITL means it's dead, and we're not going to send it anywhere. One of the bills that's coming up this week is House Bill 1033, which is relative to lobbying the legislature. What it says is that towns or municipalities may not pay for any lobbying out of their or lobbyists cannot be paid for by municipal tax appropriations. There's the word. But one of the problems with it, and it's aimed at a particular group that does lobby my committee, well, not just my committee, many committees, but they are very helpful and essential to some towns that do not have a 5-person board of selectmen or, a part-time town clerk or something that they give advice and you can agree or disagree, but, they just tell us what's out there. But the way it's written, it means that nobody can lobby. So that means Mr. Dean couldn't go up and lobby for a bill that will affect us, in some other committee.
Want to hear from?
Yeah. So like we went up, 2 years ago or 3 years ago about the sewer revolving fund.
State aid grant.
And Mr. Dean was very persuasive to get the number of the top 10 projects to be the top 11 projects. so we got included in those state aid grants. But if this passes tomorrow, we won't be able to do that. It's just going to be up to me as a legislator, not me as a selectwoman, to help you out. And that's really limiting. I think it should not pass.
I would add, too, that the bill with the NHMA sort of in the crosshairs, the NHMA is a representative body, meaning it's made up of all of the cities and towns in New Hampshire. So essentially it's not, in my estimation, it's not a lobbying arm per se, but it's a combination of all the cities and towns banding together to make their policy perspective known at the State House. So, but I don't want to interrupt too much. But that's something that's been sort of a bugaboo of mine. It's been on the table for a long time. It keeps coming back in different iterations over time, and hopefully it will die in the Senate if it passes the House.
And the other one that's coming up in finance, excuse me, is proposes to reinstate a portion of the state contribution to the employer's share of the New Hampshire retirement system. That's quite a long thing. It was zeroed out by the governor or committee, 8 years ago?
Yeah.
Even about 8 years ago?
At least, yeah.
So this bill proposes to return to at least a 7.5% contribution from the state, so that it'll lift off our tax burden, because that was really downshifted and really hurt us. So that's one we really want to support. That's in the Finance Committee. Then there's this whole list that 2 pages of bills that are in our packet that you should take a look at. And I honestly, I have 3 straight days at the State House coming up, and my brain is a little bit scattered on the amount of things that I have to do. And I'm looking at what happened last week, and I've already put those behind me. In fact, not a whole lot passed, I have to say. So look at these. If you have anything that sticks out to you and you want to know more about it, call me or email me. The next step for the ones that passed are to go to the Senate, so there is still time to communicate. And the best place to contact now is the Senate. But this week, and I'm just going to go through what affects us directly as a municipality, and one of them is my big bugaboo, the default budget. It's like first up on that in my committee. This year they once again want to create the default budget that we, every year we vote on the operating budget, and then there's a line below it that says if it fails, then this is the default budget. And there are definitions in the RSA for what goes into the default and what comes out, one-time expenditures, personnel that have been, positions that have been deleted, not just empty, waiting for someone to be hired, things like that. One-time expenditures are not considered in the default budget. But this year, they want to take anything from our proposed budget, so fiscal year 2022, say, that wasn't in our fiscal year. No, something that was in our fiscal year 2021 budget that no longer appears in our fiscal year 2022 budget should not be included in the fiscal year 2023 budget. So and then the whole thing is circular. Because further on in this new thing says including contracts, and then further on in the RSA, contracts are defined to mean the same money every year. So does the money, and if you pay off a bond early, does that money stay in the default because we already promised it would take 5 years and it only took 4? So really it should come out according to the new legislation. It sounds very confusing. It took me a little while to write the report on it just because of that. But it's taking 3 years of budgeting to figure out one default budget. The other things. The other big thing that's going to be in the committee, which has brought a lot of people out, is the fourplex or 4 family units per residential lot with conditions. Residential lot has to be served by water and sewer and has to have used the same zoning limits for each property. So like you can't infringe on the setbacks, you have to have so much street frontage. The parking stays at the same calculation as a single family house. So there are things that are that control it, so that like I couldn't put 4 units on my lot, my quarter-acre lot, because I'd be moving in on the setbacks. I could, however, divide up my house into 4 units. So that's what this is aimed at, getting more affordable housing. Mm-hmm. There is a lot of, it's very controversial. There are good things about it. It would make large lots in the middle of town, and it's the way towns progress anyway. You start out in the middle and you spread out, and then you start coming back in and densify because you need more people to work or more businesses come in. And so now it's time to densify again, in some places anyway. It will only affect Exeter very little because our water and sewer extends to a limited part of town, West Side Drive, and then Portsmouth Ave, 101, and High Street. So there's a limited amount of plots of land that could take advantage of this. People are afraid that it's going to take away our 2-acre zoning and let us put in, fourplexes everywhere. But it will keep the rural part of the town that's not served by water and sewer rural. So there's that. The other one is a plastic bag bill, which we were encouraged with. But the problem with it is that it makes it, it's not a mandate for the state. It's enabling legislation so each town can decide if they want to ban single-use plastic bags at the point of sale. So at the and that was the only thing that was in it. Sorry. That's the next thing. Here's my other one: competitive bidding in counties, but that doesn't matter to us. Single-use bags.
While the scroll is going on, I'll just say that HB 1417, which is the retirement bill, the 7.5%, the value to Exeter of that is about $300,000. It's actually a little bit more than that, so it's significant.
Yeah.
And hopefully House Finance, there's activity going on to try to convince House Finance to pass that after it was stalled into the Division 1 conversation. So we'll see.
There's one for letting counties establish revolving funds. I thought they already could, but I guess this one extends the number of things that can be resolved. There's 2 different ones on the procedure for overriding a tax cap. Those don't affect us because we have a 40% tax cap. So I don't.
I forgot about that.
The one, and I don't know which. I think I did hear it. We have one for. There's a bill for it doesn't limit the health officer's jurisdiction, it just changes it a little. Right now, the health officer comes to the selectman with select board with recommendations for an ordinance or a recommendation. And we can decide, and that's in the RSA, that the health officer can do that and has the authority, and then we have the authority to make a decision about it. That one, that's cut out in this proposed bill, so that the only thing the health officer does is look at decrepit houses, restaurant licensing, and other burdensome, rat infestations, but just on property. Nothing to do with the general health of the whole town, just on the particular property that might be bothering the neighbor or, in fact, be dangerous. So that's going to be a big fight on that one. Tax caps again. Budget caps, tax credits. We had more veterans tax credits, which I had to say, I love my veterans, but this was written so broadly to include currently serving armed forces personnel. And that would add up, that would go by 10% of what we already do for, and that's just a guesstimate. We don't really know how many people in Exeter are serving, but a guesstimate from the division of DRA was their potential that, for some towns it's going to be $300,000 or more that will be lost in revenue. They call it lost taxes, but it really means the revenue that we get, we have to give back.
That part of the equation is built into the town's tax rate as well.
Well, that's good. Then there are two or three bills. The Lakes people are all up in arms. I think I've gotten 100 emails on each of 4 bills that have to do with either wake surfing, speed on Winnipesaukee, how close you can build to the shore. I forget the other ones, but the people who have property on a lake are very upset and want these things changed. People who own boats do not want them to change, so that's going to be a big one. I would say take a look at the Judiciary Committee and the Education Committee, because they both have things. In Judiciary, a lot of them have to do with the impact of making the decision on whether or not to wear masks or get vaccinated, which may not apply anymore, but the way they're worded doesn't actually say vaccination. One of them does, which wants to to have people opt out or show a conscious decision or consciousness of adds conscience decision to religious and medical reasons for not getting vaccinated, but it includes all vaccinations, not just the recent one, but everything that your child has had to go through up until now. So it will let people, and there's no proof necessary. It doesn't have to be a doctor's note or anything like that. So
it's wild.
It is wild, I know. So there are a lot of bills that have been a reaction to the governor's emergency orders. And they're sprinkled. I have to say, these things are sprinkled all about. Like my committee used to always get the tax credit ones, but there've been a couple in other committees this year. We've always gotten the OHRV, off-highway recreational vehicles. This year there are 5, and our committee only got 1. So things are. You really have to look at all the different committees, because things are sparking up in different places. There's another big one in education, and I'm not sure if it's going to come up. I don't know the answer to that yet, but it's HB 1646. And that one changes how we vote for a cooperative school board. And the gist of it is to have just one representative from each town in the cooperative. It takes out the proportionment that's based on the number of students in each town. Excuse me. But then there was an amendment to it which said each district shall elect at least one. So the proportioning is taken out, but we can have at least one. So it sounds like we could have more than one. And in my example, it was, can Newfields have 4 and Stratham have 2?
Right.
And, so there's that one to look out for. Other than that, I can just say every committee has a bill that is really great or really problematic, and my report next meeting will be, I'm going to write it up because it's going to be so dense.
Okay.
All right.
We'll look forward to that.
Okay, thank you for indulging my time.
No,
and
thank you for
letting
filling
me,
us in on what you're doing, and you've got a busy 3 days.
well, letting me not tell you everything.
Any questions for Selectwoman Gilman? All right, thank you, Julie.
Other than all the job keeping all straight and up to date on them?
Well,
Thank you.
we
Your reports
watch out
are
for
helpful.
we watch out for each other. So, okay.
Mr. Dean, next we have the Department of Revenue Administration MS 232 Report of Appropriations.
Right, so this is a standard form that is filed every year after the annual meeting, and it has to be filed within 20 days after the annual meeting. So Finance Department, Laura Zagopoulos, who's our senior accountant over in the Finance Department, put this together. I went through it last week. It looks good, so the only thing left to do is to have the board sign it so we can submit it through the DRA portal.
Okay.
Online.
All right, we will do that. And with no action needed on that, we can jump into regular business. Selectwoman Gilman, we've got some credits and exemptions and abatements. I have the list if you need it.
I got it.
Right there, okay.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I move to approve a veteran's credit in the amount for MAP 95, Lot 64, Unit 376, in the amount of $500 for fiscal year 2022.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve a veteran's credit for MAP 73, Lot 49, Unit 1, in the amount of $500 for the year 2022.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, solar exemptions are listed, but there aren't any. Mr. Chair, I move to approve an elderly exemption for MAP 52, Lot 84, Unit 10, in the amount of $152,251 for the year 2022.
Second?
Motion and a second. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I move to approve a tax abatement for MAP 86, Lot 1, in the amount of $3,517.47 for the tax year 2021.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve a tax abatement for MAP 68, Lot 6, Unit 513, in the amount of $1,267.73 for the year 2021.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
Mr. Chair, would you like to gather these three up or vote them separately?
Please.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I move to approve the following tax abatements for property located on MAP 111, Lot 5, Unit 2, in the amounts of $165.22 for fiscal year 2019, $173.88 for fiscal year 2020, and $170.47 for fiscal year 2021.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Thank you. Madam Clerk, thank you.
No problem.
Next, we have a street name recommendation. We have a memo in our packet from the town planner, Mr. Sharples, and this is for a private roadway that will access 60 new condominium units on tax map 96, lot 15. The planning board had approved this open space subdivision off Tamron Lane. It is currently under construction. There is a map for us to refer to in our packet, but the recommendation from the town planner and the E911 committee is to name the private roadway accessing these condo units Wild Apple Lane. So I would first ask if there are any questions or comments. I'm sure Selectwoman Cowan and Selectwoman Belanger are familiar with this planning board. If there are no comments or questions, then I would entertain a motion to name the private roadway that will access 60 new condominium units on tax map 96, lot 15, Wild Apple Lane.
So moved.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Thank you. And then we have a request for a waiving of interest on a tax bill, and it looks as if the applicant is in the process of building an early childhood education center. They claim they never received a tax bill, and it was not returned to the tax office. The tax bill was sent to the physical address, which at the time did not have a mailbox. They were informed that the bill was not returned through the mail, so nobody knows where the bill is. I believe they are paying the actual bill, but are looking for a waiving of the interest, which is $59.50. Is that correct, Mr. Dean?
That's right.
Okay. Any questions or comments relative to this request? Selectwoman Belanger, as a practice, we've been considering and vetting these, and when it's been appropriate, when it looks as if they're paying the actual bill and just looking for a waiving of the interest, when there's a situation like this, the board lately has been consistently voting to waive the interest. It's just a little bit of history for the last year or two.
Yes, thank you for that.
So I'm looking for the map and lot.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Yep. So I believe it is map 55, lot 3. Is that correct, Mr. Dean?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Unit 1.
Unit 1. So I would entertain a motion to waive the interest of $59.50 for tax map 55, lot 3, unit 1 for the year 2021, as requested by the applicant.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Thank you. Mr. Dean.
So just wanted to report that we've had new hires start with us recently. Jason Behrens is a new firefighter, started work on March 8th. Chris Goodwin, who is our senior operator at the wastewater plant, started in Public Works on February 28th. And then Sean Bayless, who is a heavy equipment operator, started with the DPW on February 28th as well. So welcome to those 3 new employees to the town. I wanted to report that we're working on integrating the new union contracts that passed at the ballot. 10 Hampton Road I touched on earlier as far as where that stands. So that is, you're up to date on that. The Regional Housing Needs Survey, I attended a Housing Advisory Committee meeting last Friday where that was discussed. That's something that's being undertaken by the RPC. And I did talk to their principal planner on that, Sarah. I'm going to mess up her last name, so I'm not going to try it. So she'll actually be into the select board on the 28th to talk about the survey with you and what's behind it and the reasons for that. As I mentioned, I was at the Housing Advisory Committee last Friday attending that meeting. I did talk earlier about the budget implementation that we're going to go through with our part-time positions going to full-time, so we're looking forward to that, and those positions will be full-time as of April 1st.
Great.
So if you're interested in when that starts, that's when it starts. And I covered the retirement cost of $300,000 that is headed our way if the HB 1417 gets off the deck in the House Finance Committee. And then tomorrow I'll be attending a health trust meeting up in Concord.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Any questions of Mr. Dean? Okay, moving forward to Select Board Committee reports. Selectwoman Cowan.
I don't have anything.
Oh, wow.
I know.
Selectwoman Gilman.
I'm just checking my calendar to make sure. When did we last meet?
February 22nd, I believe.
No, it was all state all the time.
Okay.
Although this week, I have Heritage Commission Wednesday night and HDC Thursday night. Not sure if I'm going to be home in time. And then I have nothing upcoming after that except for Parks and Rec on the 29th.
Okay.
And everybody enjoy St. Patrick's Day.
So the Sustainability Advisory Committee was canceled again because of lack of a quorum. So that's really 3 months in a row. They did meet in February, but they didn't have a quorum, so it wasn't really a meeting. I know, Mr. Dean, I talked with several members of the committee and also Kristen Murphy, who, now that the budget has been approved, will be the sustainability coordinator.
Right.
So we'll try to work out a way to get this back moving. And I'll report back on that. I did pinch hit for Selectwoman Roundtree Olaf from the Swayze Park trustee meeting last Wednesday, specifically discussing tree work that they have identified that needs to be done. And Dave Short, who is the vice chair of the trustees, had been charged with looking for potential tree companies to do the work, and there are 4 or 5 of them who stepped forward. And I guess on Arbor Day annually, tree companies will look at certain municipalities and towns to do work pro bono to celebrate Arbor Day. So
kind of ironic, isn't it?
So Mr. Short has found 5 tree companies who are going to come April 29th on Arbor Day, rain or shine, unless there's torrential thunder, downpours and thunder. These 5 companies are going to do all of the work or most of the work identified. The trustees estimated that the cost of the job would have been around $19,000 or $20,000. So the fact that these 5 companies are doing it pro bono gives the town a savings. The trustees voted unanimously to take funds out of their maintenance fund that they would have used to pay for the work to provide breakfast and lunch for these 5 companies. I was remiss in saying that the companies will still have to provide the town certificates of insurance, and they'll be supervised just as they would if they were doing the work for payment. The trustees spoke about they're going to utilize local eateries for the breakfast and lunch, and we talked about how the proper way to go about funding that and billing that and everything. They're also going to reach out to local press and Mr. Glowacki to provide coverage, just to give the 5 tree companies some press and also our local eateries. So I thought that was a win-win for the town all the way around. And if there are any specifics, Mr. Dean, they're going to have one more trustees meeting before the work is actually done. So if there's anything more additionally that you need them to do, let me know.
Yeah, and we've had that conversation as well, yourself and myself, about sort of the certificates of insurance, and we just need to make sure everything's copacetic that way.
Yep. But
it's a great thing for the town.
I have one question. You talked about the 5 companies. Are they all going to be coming to Exeter and be in Swayze Park?
There's going to be 25 to 30 25 to 30, people working on the trees. And I should also add that the 5 companies are somewhat local in our region as well. Mr. Short, I think, has been charged with supervising the whole thing. They will be working with Mr. Bison and Mr. Perkins at DPW to make sure that the road is closed off with the barriers. They'll go through what they need to with Mr. Bison at Parks and Rec. They've already spoken with Mr. Perkins. And what they'll do is just use those Jersey barriers like they did when we had it closed during the emergency order. And that's just for the safety of all.
Wow.
So, and that's all I had. Mr. Dean, correspondence, I'll have you speak to, I just want to note that Riverwoods sent you a thank you note. Riverwoods hosted a forum on February 23rd. Selectwoman Gilman, Selectwoman Belanger, and I were there as candidates, but Mr. Dean, Mr. Bison, and Director Perry were there to speak to the warrant articles. And there were about 75 or 80 residents in attendance. It was well attended, very spirited, good questions, good feedback.
It was wonderful.
So they sent a thank you note to us. I think we should be thanking them because it was just very well done, very well hosted. So thank you to Riverwoods. Mr. Dean, can you speak to the 2 notices that I think you were served one in your office, correct?
Yeah, I mean, last week we were visited by 2 individuals who served us with this notice of trespass for the infringement on constitutional rights, unconstitutional use of electronic voting machines, and I won't get into the language that's in the document, but I would, we ended up calling the Secretary of State's office on this when we received it. The advice we got was follow the law, which involves use of electronic voting machines, so we did just that at the town election. Haven't heard anything else since, but this has also been referred to the town's legal counsel for any further action that we need to take, and at this point, we've been told that there isn't anything to do at this point, so.
Fantastic, okay.
Well, and this letter's been duplicated in other towns. It's not just Exeter. So it's a concerted effort.
Yeah,
and I think, Mr. Dean, you documented
several communities reached out on the listserv that I'm part of and noted that they had received the same document at the same time. That we did.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, there was another piece of correspondence on the Arts and Cultural Council.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Calandrello, who is the chair of the Arts and Culture Commission, recommended that we establish an ad hoc committee on the town hall renovations. And that's just something for the board to look at. I think it's a really good idea to have a standing, well, I guess it wouldn't be a standing committee if it's ad hoc, but have an ad hoc committee pulled together to really make recommendations on that building now that we have the revolving fund in place and we have the donations fund, which I understand is going to get some infusions of donations into that fund. So just wanted to make the board aware of this and let you mull over if you think it deserves a charge, or is it just something we can pull together on an ad hoc basis and kind of move it forward?
Well, it could be a subcommittee of the Facilities Advisory Committee.
That could have
or of both of them, combine the 2 with a member from each or something like that.
We're already having issues with
Well, I was just going to say, we can't fill committees we have right now. We just had that conversation. But an ad hoc committee, if you took folks from the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee and maybe somebody from Facilities and
Parks and Rec, since they're permitting the building.
Yeah.
Public Works, obviously. The Energy Committee, because they've expressed an interest in doing some work over there to make it more energy efficient. And then the Historic District Commission was another suggestion by Mr. Calandrello. So I think we could pull together a pretty good work group out of that.
Yeah, it wouldn't be, and that's for like bringing it up to what we'd like it to be today? Or are you seeing that would be functioning, keep some kind of care or change to the building?
Yeah, there's just been there's been a lot of discussion lately about the town hall and about what its purpose should be and what it can be. And I think that this is, the idea here is that there's a group that's organized that can serve as a clearinghouse for all the things that we're thinking about doing over there, but can actually process it and put it into action.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Okay.
So, Mr. Dean, maybe looking at, like, there's a subcommittee from the off of the planning board, which is the master plan committee, which there's 3 members of the planning board. They post their meetings. It's open to the public, but they're more sort of less formal than, yeah, you know, and Dave, I know Mr. Sharples is there. So maybe going in that sort of direction, but taking, you know, a member from each of the committees, maybe charging, you know, somebody from town staff, and then they can report back to the select board, rather than, because I think if we try to make it too formal and start recruiting, and then we're just going to,
and the idea behind this wasn't that we would recruit for more committee members, that we would use existing committee members and staff even to fill this out and just make it an ad hoc kind of work group that makes recommendations.
I think that's a good idea. Okay.
Super. Then we'll put that into action.
Okay. Board calendar, obviously March 28th. We've been off for 3 weeks. Mr. Dean, are you comfortable waiting? And we don't have to do consecutive weeks, do we?
Not at this point.
Okay.
I think we're all set.
So March 28th.
April 11th would be the first April meeting.
And then the 25th?
Yeah.
I will circle back with Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf, but I'd ask the board to come prepared on the 28th to discuss dates for goal setting in April. I know previously it's been done on a Saturday morning. Last year, because of conflicting schedules, we actually did it on a Monday afternoon at 5. So all options are on the table. If weekends are bad for some we need to have all 5 of us. So if it has to be on a Monday afternoon.
Fridays are good.
Or Friday afternoon.
Yeah, I've also reached out to Primex to see if they're still doing facilitation for goal setting, so that would be good. We could have somebody from the outside come in and do it.
Okay.
I've done it, but it's nice to have Primex there to be able to assist us with that.
Okay.
No, they've been very good at it. We've had the same person for a number of years, and he is always impressed that we, number 1, do this, and number 2, can actually see some of the changes that we've made. So the other thing we need to do is reassign or not what committees we're each sitting on.
So I was hoping that the board would agree that we do what we did last year when Selectman Brown was unable to be at the reorg meeting. We waited until the following meeting where Selectwoman Roundtree-Olaf is absent.
Right.
I think it'd be fair to.
Right. No, I don't mean right now.
Oh, okay. Because typically we would have done it tonight. Okay. If nobody else has anything, I would entertain a motion to enter non-public under RSA 91A:32A.
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Selectwoman Cowan?
Aye.
Selectwoman Belanger?
Aye.
Clerk says aye, Mr. Chair.
Aye. Passes 4-0. Board's moving into non-public.
Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 98 and 22. Channel 98 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 13, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report, with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV